name is Tiffany and welcome back to my channel. If you like sewing and DIY videos, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I am back with another Upcycle by Littletoh where I take old forgotten items and give them a new life. Before we get started, I wanted to say a huge thank you to Cricut for sponsoring today's video. I'm gonna talk more about them later, but in today's video, I'm gonna show you how I turned a thrifted curtain and leather jacket into this cute summery dress with leather embellishments, so let's get started. I thrifted this curtain for $1 and I really liked that it was textured and wasn't sheer. I initially left this jacket for someone who might need it, but it was left unsold for months and discounted to $1, so I decided to buy it. It is sewn together in panels and it did have a small rip in the front. Here is a better look at that tear. I'm going to be starting with the bodice, and I'm going to be using a pattern that I've used before for this upcycle, which I'll link down below, and I'm going to be making a few modifications, but I'll show you what they are. Here is the center front pattern I'll be using, and here is the original pattern that I modified. You can see here that I got rid of the cutout and I also extended the length of the pattern by about 1.5 inches. Here is the side front pattern and I also extended it to match the length of the center front pattern. I self-drafted the back bodice pattern, making sure that the length of the side seams matched, and this measurement here does not need to be precise because I will be making the back adjustable. I went ahead and cut out my fabric, making sure that my center front piece was cut on fold. Then I cut out my pieces for the other side. I'll start by sewing my front pieces by placing them right sides facing, sewing along here, and you should have something that looks like this. Then I place my back pieces right sides facing, sew along the side seams, and this is what the top should look like now. Next is to make straps that will be sewn on here and here. To make the straps, I cut out a long strip of fabric, and you can see here that I've gone ahead and pressed both sides of the raw edges towards the center of the strip. I'll fold this in half lengthways, hiding all of the raw edges. Before I sew this together, I'm also going to hide the raw edge of just one side of the strap and then pin everything in place. Now I'll sew to secure, and you should have something that looks like this. I made 2 shorter straps that will be sewn to the front and 2 longer ones for the back. To attach them to the bodice, I'm taking the unfinished side and pinning it to the right side of the top. For the back, I measured 3 inches from the side seam and then pinned the straps in place. I'll sew the straps to the bodice, and here is what it should look like now. Using a thrifted bedsheet, I went ahead and made my lining, which I'm placing right sides facing. Now from this side seam, I'll sew all the way around the bodice until this side seam, making sure to leave the center section open. Here is what it should look like, and you can see that the front section is left unsewn and the rest of the bodice is sewn together. I also wanted to mention that I purposely left a pretty large seam allowance on both sides here. I'll turn the bodice to the right side, and I've also gone ahead and given it a good press, and here is what the bodice should look like now. Next up is to finish the back. I'm going to be using eyelets in the back to create a lace-up closure. I've been really into adjustable clothing recently, so I love the flexibility that a lace-up closure gives. I've measured and cut out these small holes on both sides for the eyelets, and I'm laying down a towel to protect my work surface. I got an eyelet kit on Amazon and it comes with a setting tool, but you will need a hammer. I've done a more in-depth tutorial on this before, so I'm going to breeze through this, but installing the eyelets is very simple and I decided on 3 for each side. This is also why I left that extra seam allowance here, so that the eyelets will go through 4 layers of fabric and not just 2, making it a little bit sturdier. Here is what the completed bodice looks like now. Moving on to the skirt, I'm going to be making a gathered skirt for this dress, so I'm going to go ahead and cut out the pieces. Here is the front piece cut, and it measures 40 inches by 22 inches. Before I sew it to the back piece, I'm going to sew on a pocket, which I'm placing right sides facing. I'll sew together here, and this is what it should look like sewn on. I've gone ahead and done the same for my back piece, and I'm placing it right sides facing. I'll sew together along the side seam, around the pocket, and continue down the rest of the side seam, and here is what it should look like so far. I'll do the same for the other side, and here is what the skirt should look like with both pockets sewn on. I'm turning the skirt to the right side, and this is what the pocket opening should look like. Next step is to hem the skirt by folding over twice and sewing. Compared to most of my upcycles, this dress is relatively simple, so I want to elevate it by adding leather embellishments along the hem, and I'm going to add the embellishments to the skirt before I sew the skirt to the bodice. To make the embellishments, I went ahead and seam ripped the leather jacket, and here are some of the pieces that I'll be using. I only seam ripped a small portion of this jacket, so I have a lot of leather left over, and I will definitely be using this in other projects. Now it's time to introduce the star of this video, the ultimate smart cutting machine, the gorgeous Cricut Maker 3. I just love that Cricut allows you to personalize any project, and I'm definitely gonna go with some sort of floral design for the embellishment, so I'm gonna go ahead and go into the Cricut design space and then we'll figure it out from there. This is what the Cricut design space looks like. I start a new project and it brings me to this canvas. I know I want a floral shape, so I go to images and search for a flower. There are so many to choose from, so I look at some of the free options and I decided to go with this flower and added it to my canvas. I really like the design of this flower, but I also want to add a little circle in the center of it because this is going to make things a little easier for me later when I attach the flowers to the dress, so I'm going to show you how I do that. I go to shapes and click on the circle. Then I resize the circle and place it into the center of the flower. Next, I highlight both shapes and then click slice. Now when I move the flower, you can see that the center circle is separate and I can go ahead and delete that. Then I resize the flower to my desired size and started duplicating. Once I had enough flowers, I clicked Make It, and Design Space makes things really easy with these prompts. I selected to load my material on a mat and then change the size to accommodate the size of my leather piece. It also allows you to hide or move selected objects. I actually found this function super helpful since all of my leather pieces are different sizes. My next prompt is to select my material, so I typed in leather, and since my leather is quite thin, I selected this option. Then it let me know to load a deep point blade, so I switched out my blade, loaded my mat, and let it do its thing. Here is what the leather looks like freshly cut. I removed the excess leather, which was very satisfying, and then used this weeding tool to remove all of my flowers from my mat. Look at how cute all of these flowers look. I have my flowers cut out and I was playing around with the design and I ended up with this, which I really do like. But I think it would also look good with some larger flowers. So I'm gonna use the same design and have it cut out a little larger and then have two sizes to play with. Here are the two sizes that I ended up with. I messed around with some different designs and this is what I ended up with. And of course now I can't decide which one I like better. So I put a poll on Instagram and you all liked the larger flowers better, so that's the one we're doing. Once I was happy with how the design was spaced out, I went ahead and measured and marked where I wanted each flower to be. Here is the final spacing and you can see how I've marked everything out evenly. To attach the flowers to the dress, I'm going to be using double cap rivets. I've gone ahead and cut a small hole in my fabric here. I have my leather flower and I'm inserting the side of the rivet with the barrel in the hole that I had cut out. Next, I insert this through the fabric and you can see the end of the barrel poking through on the other side. Then I snap on the cap of the rivet. You can see here that I've wrapped some scrap leather around my pliers and I'm using it to set my rivet, and this is what it looks like attached. I wanted to quickly mention that I ended up needing over 150 flowers for this design, and I cannot believe how easy the cutting process was. I can't imagine how long it would have taken me if I had to do this by hand. If you've been on the fence about getting a Cricut, do it. Daisy and I got comfy and I continued to attach the rest of the flowers onto the dress. I also ended up reinforcing the rivets with the setting tool that came with the kit that I bought. Good morning, it is a new day and I spent a few hours last night attaching the flowers, but I'm not gonna lie, it took so much longer than I thought it was going to, so I only got done with the front of the dress, but I am so happy with how it looks. I'm so glad that you all picked this design because I think it turned out so well. I'm gonna start by sewing a basting stitch to just the front of the skirt to create gathers, and it should look something like this. As you can see here, I've only gathered the front of the skirt. Next is to sew the skirt to the bodice. I'm placing my bodice right sides facing and lining that up with the top of the skirt. Now I'll sew together, making sure that I only sew the shell layers and not the bodice lining, and here is what it should look like sewn together. You can see here that the bodice lining is not yet attached and the back of the skirt is also still left unsewn. I went ahead and made my skirt lining, which measures 40 inches by 20 inches. Just like the shell, I'm going to gather just the front of the lining. I've gone ahead and sewn the front skirt lining to my bodice lining, and you can see here that the lining skirt and the shell skirt are still not yet attached in the back. Now I'm turning my dress over so that the skirt layers are right sides facing. I hope this is not too confusing, but this is the lining layer of the front of the dress and this is the shell layer of the front of the dress. Here are the two layers of the back of the skirt and they are right sides facing. Now I'm lining up the side seams and pinning together, working my way across the top of the back skirt layers until I reach the other side seam. Next is to sew these two layers together. Here it is sewn, and now I'm turning the dress over to the right side, and this is what the back of the dress should look like at this point. Now I'm going to top stitch about ½ an inch away from the top, from this side seam all the way to the other side seam. This has created a channel that I'll insert my 1/4 inch elastic into. I want this dress to be super comfy and effortless, so I'm going to be using a longer piece of elastic than I actually need. I don't want the waist to be fitted, and I kind of want it to hang ever so slightly. I have a safety pin attached to one end of the elastic, and I'm going in between the shell and lining layers to find the opening to the channel. I feed the elastic to just about the halfway point, and so I don't accidentally pull the elastic all the way through, I pin this end of the elastic in place. I continue to work my way all the way across and then pin the elastic in place at this end as well. I even out the fabric, and now I'll sew both ends of the elastic in place. Here's what the back of the dress should look like, and I also wanted to show you how neat the inside looks, which, as you know, makes me very happy. I found this velvet ribbon in my stash, and it worked perfectly to lace up the back. Finally, I tie the straps into bows, and here is what the dress looks like now. While I still have to finish attaching the flowers to the back, I'm pretty happy with how this dress turned out. The sewing portion is done, and I'm so happy with how this dress is looking, so I'm going to take a little break and then I'll get back to attaching the rest of the flowers to the dress. I set up my workstation, put on a movie, and after a few hours, here is the completed dress. It is so comfortable and just perfect for summer. I love this textured fabric and simple neckline, and of course the adjustable back. But my favorite part is definitely the leather flowers that I think adds a really unique touch to this dress. I hope you all enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. Again, a huge thank you to Cricut for sponsoring today's video. The possibilities are truly endless, and I'm already so excited thinking about all of the things that I'm going to be able to do with my upcycles. If you want to see more photos of this dress, make sure you follow me on Instagram at littletoh. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And as always, thank you so much for watching.